Welcome back to the deep dive. So our mission here, as always, is to take that just um, overwhelming stack of technical sources.
Oh, like a mountain.
It really is. The articles, the conference talks, those endless developer threads, and just synthesize it all. Turn it into clear, actionable knowledge for you. And today, we are stepping right into one of the React ecosystem's most contentious territories.
Modern front-end state management. It's just
Yeah.
this never-ending debate, isn't it? If
Yeah.
you're trying to catch up, or maybe you're gearing up for a big new project, the sheer number of choices can be, well, paralyzing.
Right.
So this deep dive is grounded in real production experience. I mean, we're talking scaling complex fintech dashboards,
Yeah.
building really reliable SaaS apps.
And that's the key. We want to bypass a lot of the abstract theory and give you a practical decision framework. We're
Right.
focusing on the three main contenders you'll see out there: the native context API, the enterprise workhorse, Redux, specifically modern Redux Toolkit, and the lightweight challenger, Zustand.
And we're comparing them on things that actually matter in the real world. Boilerplate, performance hits, and how well they actually scale.
Because as an app gets more complex, that predictable data flow becomes your lifeline.
It absolutely is. Choosing the right tool early on isn't really about premature optimization. It's about minimizing the chaos you'll have to deal with later.
You mean the maintenance headaches.
Exactly. If you pick the wrong tool for your team size or your app's complexity, you are going to pay for it down the line, big time, with painful debugging and weird performance issues.
Okay, so to make this all stick, let's use that analogy from our research. Think of these tools like packing different bags for a trip. First, you've got the context API. That's your lightweight backpack. Super easy to grab, simple to use, but it doesn't hold much.
Then there's Redux. That's the full-on, meticulously organized suitcase. It's got compartments for everything, a heavy frame.
Yeah.
It's all about structure for those long-haul journeys.
And the third one?
And then Zustand. That's the pragmatic sling bag. It fits just what you need. Everything's super accessible, and half the time you forget you're even carrying it.
I like that.
So our job here is to help you figure out which trip you're actually taking so you can pack the right bag.
Okay, let's unpack that backpack first. Most developers, they sort of stumble into context API because it's native to React.
Right, there's zero added bundle size. It feels like the default easy choice.
But what is its true function? If it's not really a state manager, what is it?
And that is the crucial distinction to make. Context is fundamentally a dependency injection mechanism.
Okay, dependency injection.
Yeah, it's not a sophisticated state management tool. It's really just designed to pass props deep into the component tree without all that messy prop drilling.
So if we're using this lightweight backpack, where does it genuinely shine? What's the green light use case?
It shines where your state updates are infrequent, very infrequent. Context is perfect for application configuration.
Things that don't change much.
Yeah. Exactly, like theme switching, dark mode, light mode. Maybe that happens once a session. User authentication state's another great one. Or your I18N locale, feature flags.
Got it.
These values change so rarely that the performance cost is it's negligible.
That makes total sense for static app-wide settings.
Yeah.
But why does the backpack just break the moment you try to use it for data that updates all the time?
It all comes down to its core mechanism. When the value in a context provider changes, React re-renders every single component that consumes that context.
Every single one, no exception.
Everyone. So imagine you have a big user object in context. You just want to update the avatar URL.
Okay.
But you've got 20 other components reading that same user object, maybe just for the username. All 20 of them are going to re-render completely unnecessarily.
Wow. Okay, that sounds like performance quicksand. You also mentioned a specific warning sign to look out for, something you called provider hell.
Yes. If you open a file and see 5 or 6 providers nested inside each other,
A theme provider inside an auth provider inside a settings provider.
you've got it. That is your bright red flag, your code smell. It means you've overloaded the backpack and you're now fighting the tool instead of using it. At that point, you really need something that was built for selective updates.
Which brings us to the big one. We're throwing away the backpack and looking at the full, organized suitcase. Redux, it has this reputation for being incredibly complex, tons of boilerplate, but we have to talk about modern Redux Toolkit, or RTK. Does that reputation still hold true?
It's largely a dated reputation now. RTK, the Redux Toolkit, it just completely changed the overhead equation.
In what way?
It uses powerful conventions and libraries like Immer right under the hood, which dramatically cuts down on the setup. I mean, we're talking about 50 to 70% less boilerplate than what you saw 5 years ago.
Okay, 50 to 70% is a huge reduction. But is it still too much overhead for, say, a medium-sized project? What's the barrier that's still there?
The barrier isn't just the code, it's the mental model, the learning curve. Redux's core value isn't about having the least boilerplate. Its value is predictability. It's about enforced patterns.
And a big part of that is immutability. Let's define that really quickly, because with Redux, it's non-negotiable.
Right. Immutability just means you never, ever change the state object directly. Instead, when you need to make an update, you always return a brand new copy of the state with your changes applied.
And a tool like Immer helps with that.
Exactly. Immer handles it safely for you. But that enforced structure is the whole point. It ensures that when a bug pops up, you know exactly which action caused which state change. It makes debugging at scale even possible.
So that structure is what you need for large, maybe chaotic team environments. Where do you reach for that full Redux suitcase?
You reach for it when structure is the only thing preventing chaos. Large teams, 10 or more front-end engineers, where you need a common pattern just to keep things maintainable.
Makes sense.
And second, when you're building mission-critical systems, think financial trading, payment processors, healthcare apps, places where having an audit trail is an absolute requirement.
And what about really complex data flows?
That's where you get into middleware, the custom compartments of the suitcase. We use tools like funks or sagas to manage really complex async logic, multiple API calls that depend on each other, race conditions, that sort of thing.
So they're not just for fetching data.
No, not at all. They're invaluable when you need custom logging for every action, or analytics tracking, or you need to build API interceptors for the entire application.
That audit trail you mentioned connects right to Redux's biggest killer feature, time travel debugging. You had a war story about that from the research.
Oh, yeah. This feature saved us from, well, a complete meltdown on a very complex trading platform. I remember a user reported that their active order had just disappeared from the screen. Vanished.
And trying to debug that sounds impossible.
Without Redux DevTools, it would have been. But because every single state change was logged as a distinct action, we could see the order submitted, the order canceled, all the little price updates. We could actually replay the entire sequence, step by step.
And what did you find?
We found this really obscure production-only race condition. It was firing an unintended cancellation action just milliseconds after the order was submitted. That ability to literally rewind time and see what happened, that is often the justification for the entire Redux investment.
All right, let's move on to the Sling bag, Zustand. Our research suggests this is fast becoming the default choice for, what, maybe 70% of projects today?
I think that's about right. It hits that sweet spot. It balances the power of Redux's philosophy with the simplicity of context.
So what exactly makes it the sweet spot?
It's basically Redux's core ideas, just stripped of all the ceremony. The setup is minimal. You just create a store with a single function. It's incredibly lightweight, like 1 kilobyte, and the API. It just feels like you're using native React hooks.
Which means the learning curve is pretty low.
Very low. Developer velocity is high right from the start.
Okay, so if it feels like a native hook, how does it manage to be so performant? How does it avoid the context API re-render trap?
That's the technical elegance of it. That's the aha moment. Zustand uses proxies for fine-grained reactivity.
Proxies.
Think of them as smart observers that wrap your state. When you access a property or you change a property, the system knows, and it only alerts the specific components that are subscribed to that specific piece of data.
So if I update, say, user.firstname, the component that's only reading user.lastname doesn't even blink. It doesn't re-render.
It doesn't even know a change happened.
Right.
Exactly. You get all the performance benefits of selectors like you'd have with Redux's useselector, but with almost zero setup.
And you saw this in practice.
Oh, absolutely. We migrated a complex sauce dashboard from Redux to Zustand, and we cut our state management code by 40%. 40. With no loss of functionality or scalability. It scales beautifully for medium to large apps.
And it still handles modern stuff like persistence, async logic.
Yep. Through very simple middleware, you can easily add persistence for offline storage. And async logic is just, it's handled naturally inside the store. For most cases, you don't need a separate library like thunks or sagas.
Okay, if it's this good, there has to be a catch. What's the trade-off for all this flexibility and simplicity?
The trade-off is the flip side of it being less opinionated.
It doesn't force your hand.
Right. Zustand doesn't have Redux's built-in strict enforcement of things like immutability. So a junior developer or just a developer in a hurry could accidentally mutate state directly.
And that can introduce those really hard to track bugs.
The exact kind of bugs Redux's structure is designed to prevent. With Zustand, you need discipline. You have to enforce those patterns yourself, usually with something like lint rules. Redux forces structure. Zustand allows structure, but you have to build it. So if we connect all this back to the bigger picture, the choice has to be intentional. It's not about what's popular on Twitter. It's about your project's scale and your team's composition.
Okay, so let's summarize that decision framework for everyone listening. Based on our sources, who should pack which bag?
Right, here's the intentional breakdown. For Context API, start here for a proof of concept, a small internal tool. Or if you're only managing configuration that barely ever updates. The rule of thumb is fewer than 5 components should need that state.
And Zustand.
Zustand is your go-to for most medium complexity apps. E-commerce sites, admin dashboards, most SaaS products. It's perfect for small to medium teams, say up to 8 devs, where developer velocity is really critical.
And finally, the big suitcase.
You reserve Redux for mission-critical, high-compliance applications, or for very large teams that absolutely need enforced patterns to avoid chaos. And of course, when you have that really complex multi-stage async logic that demands orchestration with thunks or sagas.
So we have the right tools for the right jobs, but we also need to talk about the anti-patterns, right? The hard lessons that pop up no matter which library you pick.
Absolutely. And the first rule is so simple. Localize your UI state.
Don't put everything in the global store.
Please don't. I've spent weeks of my life debugging code bases where every single temporary form input value was living in the global Redux store. It's madness.
Right.
That kind of UI state should almost always be local, managed with React's use state.
But then don't you risk falling back into prop drilling?
You can, which is why you have to co-locate state with its usage. Just because you can make something global doesn't mean you should. We use what we call the 3-component rule.
Okay.
If fewer than 3 components truly need that piece of state, especially if they're close together in the component tree, just use local state or props, it's simpler and almost always faster.
So what does all this mean for someone starting a brand new project today? We've talked about Context, Redux, and Zustand, but the modern reality, from what our sources say, is actually a hybrid stack.
Yes, and this is probably the most critical insight for anyone building an app in 2024 or 2025. The best teams have stopped trying to make one tool do everything.
They're separating their concerns.
Exactly. They explicitly separate client state things, like UI preferences, local settings from server state, which is all about data fetching, caching, and API results.
So walk us through what that ideal hybrid stack looks like right now.
It's a 3-part setup. First, you use the Context API for that base configuration layer we talked about. Auth status, the current theme, app config. Set it and forget it.
Okay, part 1.
2, you use Zustand for the true client state, the stuff that's local to the user session, UI layout preferences, a shopping cart, maybe a simple undo-redo stack.
And then the third piece, which feels like the revolutionary part, the server state manager.
Precisely. All the heavy lifting of fetching data from your APIs is handled by a dedicated library, TanStack query, which most people still call React query.
And that's the big shift.
It's a massive shift. TanStack query has effectively replaced 90% of the complex async logic we used to write in Redux.
How does it manage that server data so much better?
Because it handles the entire data lifecycle for you. The fetching, the caching, deduping requests, background refetching when you focus the window, error handling, all of it out of the box. You spend way less time writing complex thunks and way more time on your actual business logic.
Which brings us to that controversial take you shared with us.
Yeah, the take is this. The combination of React Query plus Zustand handles 95% of applications better, faster, and more maintainably than using Redux alone.
Wow.
Redux is now a highly specialized tool. It's best reserved for when its deep features, the middleware stack, the guaranteed immutability, the time travel debugging, are genuinely non-negotiable requirements for your mission. It's no longer the default choice.
And for anyone still worried about performance bottlenecks,
Just remember the bottleneck is rarely the tool itself. I've seen beautifully fast Redux apps and tragically slow Zustand apps. Performance issues usually come from misuse putting way too much in a single context or failing to memoize your components properly. The best state solution is the one your team actually understands and can use consistently.
So we've really navigated the landscape here. We've got the lightweight backpack, Context for simple config,
The organized Suitcase, Redux, for enterprise-level enforcement.
and the nimble sling bag, Zustand, for that vast majority of projects that need balance and speed.
The key is to measure your complexity before you commit to packing. The decision really depends on your app's entire lifecycle. You have to ask, should you start with context? Because the app is small today, knowing you might hit a performance wall in 6 months and have to migrate to Zustand.
Or do you skip that step?
Right. Or do you skip that intermediate step entirely?
And that's really the core question we want to leave you with. Should you wait until the product itself demands the structure of Redux? Maybe, when you hire that 10th engineer.
Or do you start with an opinionated tool early on to enforce good habits from day one, even if it feels a little like overkill at the beginning? Don't over-engineer on day 0, but do anticipate your growth. Figure out how your app is likely to scale over the next year, and then choose the system that's going to scale right along with it.